Welcome back. You're still watching The Weekend Show. Welcome to the political segment. Before we go any further, here is our tribute to Flying Officer Tolulokpe Arotil, who was killed in a road traffic accident in Kaduna. All right, it seems we're still having some technical difficulties there, but we do have a tribute coming up to Flying Officer Tolulokpe Arotil, a brilliant young lady, the first of her kind, who unfortunately on July 14th suffered head injuries sustained from a road traffic accident at NAF base in Kaduna. Until her death, Flying Officer Arotil, who was commissioned into the NAF in September 2017 as a member of Nigerian Defense Academy, Regular Course 64, was the first ever combat helicopter pilot in the service. During her short but impactful stay in the service, late Arotil, who hails from Ijumu local government area of Kogi State, contributed significantly to the efforts to rid the north-central states of armed bandits and other criminal elements by flying several combat missions under Operation Gamma Aiki in Minna, Niger State. The Chief of Air Staff, Air Marshal Sadiq Abubakar, on behalf of officers, airmen, airwomen, and civilian staff of the NAF, commiserates with the family of late Flying Officer Arotil over their irreparable loss. We pray here at the Weekend Show that the Almighty God grant her soul eternal rest. So, as I said, welcome back to the political segment of the Weekend Show. We'll be discussing the Nddc controversy, the Niger Delta Development Commission controversy. Joining us in today's program, we have
Bishop Johnson, the former United States captain, the security professional and consultant. Welcome back to the Weekend Show.
Thank you for having me.
A pleasure.
Bishop Johnson, the Niger Delta Development Commission was set up under former President Olusegun Obasanjo, and we saw that his predecessor, Umar Yar'Adua, late Umar Yar'Adua, set up the Niger Delta Ministry to oversee the Niger Delta Development Commission. However, given the recent controversies, many people have thought maybe both ministry and agency have become redundant, given the fact that over 300 billion has been allocated to the Niger Delta Development Commission between 2016 and 2020, and majority of those funds have been unaccounted for. Do you agree with this notion that both the Ministry of the Niger Delta and the Niger Delta Development Commission are redundant and one should be scrapped?
Well, first and foremost, I do agree that they have been redundant, almost useless, because their presence is not felt. However, I do not agree that they should be scrapped. What I do agree is that we must hold everyone who had participated in squandering, in looting, and in bankrupting both the commission and the ministry, and render them useless to the people of the Niger Delta. We do believe that those people should be held accountable. And that is why people like us have been at the forefront of this battle. I was at the National Assembly on Wednesday to testify on behalf of my NGO, the Niger Delta Youth Forum, on what we know. We believe that everyone who has participated in one form or the other should be held to account. And that's why the probe, we support the probe 150%. But we do believe that that probe should not be another avenue for corruption. This is a country that has been adjudged as, fantastically corrupt. It's not from me. Remember when our president went to the UK and the former British Prime Minister said Nigeria was fantastically corrupt. And we have not come out to dispute that, meaning that Nigeria is fantastically corrupt. I believe that the forensic audit should go on, but it has to be with an independent, internationally acclaimed, reputable forensic auditing firm. It shouldn't be Nigerian firms, because Nigerian firms, you give them 1 billion, 2 billion, they will write the report that you want, and the corruption will continue. I do also believe that the National Assembly probe is equally justified, the National Assembly is constitutionally mandated to carry out oversight function of every government agency or any organization that collects money or funds on behalf of the Nigerian people. So I do support their probe. We want to unravel the mystery that is being behind the Niger Delta Development Commission and the Ministry of Niger Delta Affairs. I've been one of the first people to call that there should, in addition to the forensic audit going on in the Niger Delta Development Commission, there should be another forensic audit going on in the Ministry of Niger Delta Affairs, because the Ministry of Niger Delta Affairs is culpable, or even more culpable than the NDDC in executing projects. There's a culture of corruption in the Ministry of Niger Delta Affairs that we ought to look into that ministry to see why it is not delivering on its mandate to the people of the Niger Delta. You are aware of the infamous road, the East-West Road, one of the most viably economic road in the Niger Delta, that the Ministry of Niger Delta has been unable for almost a decade now to rehabilitate. There are other projects, skills acquisition centers. There is one that is in my village. It's been abandoned for close to 10 years now. There is one in Calabar. There's another one in Delta. They are scattered all over the region, abandoned by the Ministry of the Niger Delta Affairs. So we need to look at both the ministry and the commission.
You know, Bishop, in a time where the Niger Delta has a Niger Delta scholarship, and you have hundreds or close to thousands of students stuck in different parts of the world on a scholarship, and their fees haven't been paid, their living expenses haven't been taken care of. It was reported by a tracker that 3.1 billion naira was shared to over 1,000 people as palliatives for COVID recently. Now, with this probe we've seen, the Minister for Niger Delta has been accused of being corrupt. The former MD has been accused. The acting MD has also been accused. And I think the former MD accused the senator, the chairman of the committee, for being a party to the case. Now, aren't we just playing to the gallery by still doing this at the National Assembly when we have the Independent Corrupt Practice Commission, ICPC, that it's their duty to look into matters like this and prosecute it if their parties found culpable? Aren't we just dancing to the gallery, having these probes where at the end of the day, National Assembly may just give a recommendation and that's that, while monies are being spent, lives are being lost, and people are being left stranded?
Well, you see, this is the frustration of all of us. I am frustrated that the National Assembly is incapacitated to enforce its resolutions. Now, the ICPC is there, the EFCC is there. The probe of the National Assembly does not in any way prevent the ICPC or EFCC from doing their job. I believe that a government can work and at the same time chew gum. We can do multiple things at the same time. That is why we have multiple agencies, anti-graft agencies, to be looking into the agencies of government that are funded with public funds. So ICPC can do its job. EFCC can do their job. The National Assembly must also do its job. It has a constitutional responsibility. You see, people have said something about the chairman of the Nddc committee of the House of Representatives being accused. This is just one person. We're talking about an institution here. It's not about him. If there is need for him to recuse himself, he can recuse himself. But the institution of the National Assembly must never be in any way be weakened or undermined from doing his job. He must do his constitutional job. That is one of the tripods of our democracy. If we begin to undermine the institution of the National Assembly, then our democracy will be in peril. So we need them to do their job. If there are individuals that have corruption or allegation cases hanging on their head, such people can be recused. And let the whole institution continue to function the way it was originally crafted by the framers of our Constitution.
Most definitely. You know, the core mandate of the Niger Delta Development Commission, when former President Olusegun Obasanjo set it up in 2000, was to train and educate the youth of the Niger Delta to curb oil bunkering and other criminalities that were occurring in the Niger Delta region. From your own assessment, do you believe that they've been able to at least succeed in training, educating and curbing militancy in the Niger Delta?
Not at all. None of the institutions or programs that is being constituted by the federal government to look into the problems that have been plaguing the people of the Niger Delta has ever succeeded. If they had succeeded, we wouldn't be where we are today. It's because of their failures is the reason why we are where we are today. They have not. The reason why you're not seeing militancy as you used to see it before is because the people are giving the government the opportunity to deliver on its promise to the people of the Niger Delta. That is why the militancy is not at the rate as it used to be. Now, I've been one of those that says, look, because we've been crying that the federal government is not doing a lot for the Niger Delta people, and justifiably so, until the former president, Olusegun Obasanjo, listened to our cries and established the Nddc. Yaradua equally listened to us and established the Ministry of Niger Delta Affairs, and then you now have the amnesty program. All of these were geared towards ameliorating the living standard of the people of the Niger Delta. You are from the Niger Delta, so you know what I'm talking about. I am from the Niger Delta. You know that when you go to our area, our region is probably one of the most impoverished in the entire country, regardless of the fact that the burden of sustaining the economy of this country has been borne by us for decades. The first oil well was discovered in my village in the 50s. But I guarantee you that we don't have electricity. We have no running water, we have no roads. We don't even have a functioning hospital. And it should not be so. And the government listened to us, and we are able to come up with all these agencies and programs. I am not somebody who believes that you have to throw money at problems. Because if you are not able to spend 1,000 naira judiciously, if they give you 1 million, you equally not be able to spend it judiciously. I think that the money that has been invested in the region, and there is nothing to show for that investment, we need to go back and give account of what we have done with those funds. And if anybody is found culpable in any form or shape to have participated in luring, diverting, misappropriating, embezzling those funds, those people should be held to account and brought to book.
So we can't talk about this without talking about the security implication of what's going on. Because we have a people who are aggrieved, and we've spoken about the organic cleanup several times and the plight of the people of the Niger Delta. And so with all of this happening, what this now creates is a vacuum in leadership and a trust deficit. There's the trickle-down effect to the young people, to the people in your communities. As a security expert, what's the security implication of what's going on?
The security implication of what is going on is huge, it's significant. Significant in the sense that, look, there's a possibility that we could go back to the inglorious days where you have militancy and kidnapping in the order of the day. And should that be the case, the economy of this country, as we know, will crumble. The economy is already suffering as a result of several factors: the decline in the crude oil price, the coronavirus pandemic, all of these things combined. And then you now add instability and insecurity to it. So it will definitely bring this country to its knees. So it has huge security implication. When people hear about hundreds of billions of money being allocated for their own development, being embezzled, misappropriated, diverted by a few individuals, and yet those individuals have somehow lived above the law, they have not been able to be brought to book to give account of what they did with those funds. These are the kind of situations that are recipe for crisis, recipe for lawlessness and for disaster, because people will decide at some point to take the laws into their own hands and take their own destiny in their hands by going out there and doing some of the things that will, lead to the insecurity that we've tried to avoid over the years in the region.
I wonder, perhaps, are these so-called militants not also part of the problem? You heard the former acting MD, Joy Nonye, testify yesterday at the House of Representatives that she was bothered, overwhelmed by the request to give them money for Christmas, give them money for, ESTA codes, give them money for very trivial things. And she said she will not do it because that wasn't the mandate of the commission. But her predecessors had always done that, giving the people of the Niger Delta, men and women, everyday men and women, not even those in political office, but meeting their requests for very trivial expenses. So these so-called militants, aren't they part of the problem? Now that they're hearing people are stealing hundreds of billions, and they were also, some of them were also beneficiaries of these hundreds of billions for their flimsy or trivial expenses. So aren't they also part of the problem? And to finally fix this issue of, lack of development in the Niger Delta, doesn't it take a holistic approach, from those in public office to those of us who originate or are indigents from the Niger Delta region?
You're completely correct. We have to fight our own demon. That is why I have consistently said that all those who have in any way participated, whether it be them militants or those in leadership position, that the forensic audit ought to uncover everybody that had participated in wasting our money, and all of those people held to account. I've always believed that 60% of the problem we have in the Niger Delta is perpetrated by us Niger Deltans. 40% is from the outside, the federal government. And the reason why I say federal government is responsible for 40% is this. You don't give out money to people, and you don't ask for accountability. The federal government must be a supervisor, a monitor, class monitor, a class prefect that should be able to monitor the monies that is given to any agency in this government, not just the Nddc or the Ministry of Niger Delta Affairs. It's just like all of us who are parents. If you're paying school fees for your child, will you not demand to see the report card of your child to know that your child is actually going to school and staying in school and doing what he or she is supposed to do? That is the job of the federal government. But because the federal government has failed in its responsibility of ensuring that there is accountability in agencies of government, that is why we are where we are today. And that is why people like us have been aggressively agitating that this country should be restructured so that we can reduce the responsibilities of the government to what is important to us. Not our federal government being a jack of all trades and a master of none. And this is one of the consequences, is one of the fallouts of having a federal government that has over 600 agencies. How in the world are you supposed to supervise all of them? So basically what happens is that the federal government just set up agencies and just let them run wild. That is what is happening right now. So yeah, I'm not saying it's only the leadership that are involved, the people are involved. If you look at the corruption that we have accused the Nigerian police of for several years, you discover that citizens are even the ones who volunteer to give police bribe. If somebody is driving a vehicle without updated records and gets pulled over by the cops, he offers money to the police. So the police collects money. So it takes two to tango.
Bishop, sorry for cutting you short. I want to bring you back to your point on leadership.
Sure.
Nddc is under the executive arm.
Correct.
The Ministry of Niger Delta is under the executive arm. The Nigerian police, where some police officers were at Joyner's house on Wednesday, and then the ones the governor brought to disperse them, all under the executive. And so this questions leadership. As a leader, and you're not the president, but we need solutions.
Sure.
We've not heard that the president has summoned the executive arm, the people under his purview, to have a conversation. What do you think the president should do at this point, even though the National Assembly is carrying out its own duty? What should the executive arm, specifically the president, do about this to fix this problem right now?
I think the president has to take charge. We've always believed that he's not in charge. Remember, Nigerians have always, whether it's real or not, we've always felt that the former chief of staff, Abba Kyari, was the one who was calling the shots. Nigerians have always had this feeling that their president, whom they elected, He's the one that we elected, not the ones people appointed, has not been in charge. So the president, what the president needs to do is to stand up, take charge, and call people to order. I witnessed in the National Assembly one of the most unruly behavior of any head of an agency in this country. Walked out of the National Assembly. He did so because he knows that there is no implication. There will be no consequences for doing that. The president must not allow members of his executive to disrespect the National Assembly, which is another branch of our government, established to ensure that there is proper checks and balances in our government. Mr. President must hold those who work for him to account. Those who violate policies, laws, regulations. You saw what happened at the airport, where they say VIPs are not following the protocols. So it feels and sounds like we are in a country of lawlessness because nobody is actually enforcing our laws. The president is the chief law enforcement officer. People said he's the Attorney General and Minister for Justice. He's appointed by the president. So he works for the president. The president is the chief law enforcement officer. He must be a law and order president. He must rein in his members of executive. Otherwise, the legacy he's going to leave behind will be a very bad one for him. And I don't think he wants to leave such a legacy where in less than 1 month there have been 3 walkouts from National Assembly. And that does not mean good for our democracy. So the president has to take charge, rein in his members of executive, restore discipline in his executive, so that way he can achieve some of the things that he intends to achieve for the people of this country.
Bishop, that's a fine place to leave it. Thank you so much for your time. We'll take the electoral reform segment of the weekend show with Ariyo Dare. Don't go anywhere.